Hi everybody, I'm Eileen, and welcome to Stop and Think. The premise of this program began because I'm tired of hearing the two main political parties constantly battling each other to a point of political paralysis. And likewise, it's sad that everyday Americans are finding their own neighbors, friends, and family because they're so worked up from purposeful emotional manipulation from both sides. Let's all take a breath and stop and think. Is what we're fighting over actually factual? We need to stop the madness. Both sides contribute positive things to America, and we need to remember we're not enemies. We're simply two sides of the same coin. If you're a Democrat, please recognize it was honorable Republicans who helped save democracy. Mike Pence, Brad Raffensperger, Gabriel Sterling, Governor Kemp, and so on. And if you're a Republican, please recognize that Democrats saved reasonable health care for America and also got the CHIPS Act passed, which brings manufacturing back to America. They negotiated lower prices for insulin and are trying to negotiate more drug prices being lowered, as well as they have raised the minimum wage for federal workers. Let's add, it took partnership and bipartisan support to get these things accomplished. Everyone is so damn focused on negativity that they don't see the positivity that is coming from both sides when they work together. To be clear, I have no interest in persuading or dissuading anybody from what their political choice is. I only want to present what is fact from what is fantasy, so you know you're making your political choices based on reality. Unfortunately, the far right and the far left have had the loudest voices. But you know what? Most of us are more in the middle. So we need to pick up that bullhorn and shout from the rooftops. We're smarter than this. You can't just push our buttons and we'll react. To be clear, I have voted on both sides of the aisle, and I think many Americans are more independent these days, and we all need to be more independent and choose wisely based on facts, not information from biased social media or biased news sources. We need to get the more moderate people, both Democrat and Republican, back in power. We have very honorable Republicans like Governor Chris Sununu and Larry Hogan, and also honorable Democrats like Secretary Pete Buttigieg and Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Many of the people across the aisle want a united America. We need to do our job and tune out the emotional manipulators who are trying to divide us to enhance their power. I'm asking everyone to stop letting themselves be emotionally manipulated through social media or nonsense speeches and think for themselves again. Unfortunately, we have many politicians who aren't leaders. They're strictly following what their constituents want to hear, whether it's true or not. That is not leadership. So we need to be very careful about discerning fact from fantasy. It is we, the people of the United States, who need to heal this divide to become a stronger America again. When united, America is unbeatable. Divided, America is weakened, and we will not allow that anymore. I think most of us are tired of waking up to fear, anger, angst, or hate. It's enough, and I do mean enough. If you feel the same, stay tuned. Let's take a commercial break, and we'll be right back with our next segment, which is called Fact or Fantasy. Welcome back to the Fact or Fantasy segment of the program. Here are some fairly recent stories demonstrating that we have to stop and think, and sometimes do a little research to find out what is fact and what is fantasy. I'm going to start with the emotional manipulation directed at the left. Most of us have seen stories that said it was insulting to Jewish people for Bradley Cooper to use a prosthetic nose to play Leonard Bernstein. What's the fact? The AJC, the American Jewish Committee, as well as the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, both groups that look out for anti-Semitism, said there was nonsense. There was nothing anti-Semitic about this. Even Leonard Bernstein's family didn't think there was anything wrong. It's just emotional manipulation to try to make liberals think some minority was being prejudiced against and work up a froth. Total fantasy, not a fact in there. Now let's take a look at emotional manipulation of the right. A friend of mine who leans right was all worked up that Target was making tuck-friendly swimsuits for children, as if indoctrinating them into a transgender lifestyle. I knew this didn't sound right. So all it took was one search online to find multiple articles clarifying this was never made for children. It was all nonsense. Target actually suffered a stock drop because of this kind of misinformation that was all over social media. We are going to have to be our own advocates for truth. We cannot just look at things that get sent to us through social media or a speech from a politician and assume they're true. We have to do our homework. So please, from now on, stop and think. Does this sound accurate? This is not accidental. Sometimes they're assuming we're not smarter than this, but we are smarter than this. And we're going to start questioning the nonsense that comes out. By the way, when you are in doubt, here are some non-opinion, straightforward sources of news to verify your questions. The Associated Press, or AP, Reuters, BBC, PBS, and NPR, all mostly neutral. But most importantly, truth resides in these news outlets. Another one of the largest issues has been the story of the 2020 election being rigged. After 61 court cases, many of which had Trump-appointed judges, and after multiple recounts in many states by Republicans no less, it was proven there was no substantial fraud. Even the very conservative Supreme Court refused the case twice. And the two people who spearheaded the election fraud stories, Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, both have admitted they had no evidence of fraud. Let's take a look at those graphics. But unfortunately, we still have at least 30 million people believing the fantasy. This purposeful division and emotional manipulation is weakening our country, and it needs to stop. Even when we don't like a story and it doesn't agree with what we hope is true, we have to look at reality. So how do we remove emotion from critical thinking and look strictly for facts and evidence? Well, let's take a commercial break, and we'll be right back with the interview segment called The Perspective. Stay right there. Welcome back, everybody. And here is The Perspective, the interview portion of our program. To help us with making clear decisions is my first guest, a man who has made a career out of removing emotion and looking for evidence or fact only to make sound, important decisions. Friends, please welcome the former Supreme Court Justice of the state of Nevada, the Honorable A. William Maupin. Welcome to the show, Your Honor. I'm curious, are you concerned about how high the temperature is in this nation, emotionally and politically?
I'm very concerned about it. It has turned this country into a divided entity when the intent of the founding fathers and all the people that fought in wars since then on behalf of the United States, they fought for a United States, and we are now divided because there is a large group that believes that something is absolutely right or it's absolutely wrong. And the fact of the matter is...
So you're saying it's black and white, They're not giving leeway to
Right.
different points of view.
And one side's idea is you're not compromising with us because you're not agreeing with us. And that is not the same thing. And what the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence were designed to do were to set a template for Americans to agree and disagree, and then develop a consensus or some sort of synthesis of understanding to where you can agree to disagree and then come up with a solution that provides as much as possible something for everyone. Right now, all you hear is, I'm right, you're wrong, and because you're wrong, you don't even belong in the system anymore. So this is a very serious attack on the democratic process.
From a strictly as neutral a standpoint as possible, because I'm sure you have an emotional center on this, but as neutral as you can be, how did you feel when 6 of the 8 GOP candidates on the debate stage said they would support Trump even if he were convicted of trying to obstruct a free and fair election? Now, I can't lie, this bothered me a lot. I know many have spoken about the 14th Amendment, which could constitutionally disqualify Trump if he's found guilty. From a judicial standpoint, do you have a view on these 6 people saying they would support him even if guilty?
Well, when I first saw all of this, I kind of took the criminal prosecutions out of the equation. If you are willing to vote for someone despite the fact they're found guilty of undermining American democracy while they're in a position of power, I mean, that's one thing. If you take that out of the equation and you look at what he appears, at least on tape and by his own admissions, actually done, well, that's a kind of that's a disqualifying factor of itself, but that isn't really the point. The point is that they are running for the office of President of the United States. That means that they believe, or they should believe, that they can do a better job than any of the other current applicants. But if you would vote for a candidate, regardless of what they had done, and you're running for that office, then you should just withdraw from the race. You're basically...
So you're saying he's good, then why are you running against him?
Yeah, well, if they say those things, then why? What is the point of their campaign?
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, I was kind of shocked about, I mean, the alleged law and order people saying that they would not be bothered if someone were found guilty, as if the old saying, he's above the law, which nobody's above the law. On occasion, I'm sure you've seen as well as I have, that we have some prominent Republicans talking about a national divorce or a civil war. I'm in fear of becoming the divided states of America. Do you have any advice on how we can find common ground again? How do we pull ourselves together? Because at this point, I think it's the American people who need to do it. How do we get ourselves pulled together?
The fact of the matter is this issue has been decided. It was litigated in the Revolutionary War, not in the lawsuit sense, but in the prosecution of the war. But the Civil War is where this was finally settled as a legal matter. Lincoln established a precedent that once you are a member of the states of your state is a member of the states of the United States of America, you cannot legally secede.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
okay.
that was part of his suspension of habeas corpus under his powers as president during the Civil War, and so to suggest such a thing right now is under that precedent is
Is it
just,
treasonous, or what would you call it?
It is abhorrent to a country that took the trouble to declare their independence from the most powerful nation on earth at the time. They took that trouble. That independence is very important, and if there is some sort of civil war, the national government will have the right to suppress it.
Okay, because it's legally against the law to secede from the nation.
That is.
I bet you a lot of Americans don't know that.
That's my opinion, and it's the opinion of many constitutional scholars who have studied the interplay between the Civil War and what was happening in terms of the evolution of the Constitution.
Thank you. As mentioned earlier in the show, both Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, the two attorneys who spearheaded the disinformation that the 2020 election was rigged, have admitted that they had no evidence of fraud at all. In fact, Sidney Powell said, and I quote, "No reasonable person would have believed my election fraud claims." She's basically insulting millions of Trump voters who did believe her. How do we get the millions of Americans who still believe the election was rigged on board with reality, especially after numerous recounts and over 60 court cases showed there was no evidence of fraud? How do we reach them?
I have to take a little issue with what you said. It isn't that that they are exploiting people who are unintelligent. These people come from all walks of life, all levels of intelligence, and what they were being told by someone in whom they had immense trust that the country is no longer any good for them, that they have to take it over, and that the process of legislative decision making, the balance of powers between the executive, the judicial, and the legislative branch, these are all important interplays that keep the country stable. You can't have a stable country without a strong executive, but you also have to have a strong legislature. And at the end of the day, you have to have an arbiter of what the other two do, which is the Supreme Court. So these people that have bought into this, into particularly the admitted falsehoods by these two lawyers, what they have been is they're human beings. They have viewpoints like everybody else, but they have been, I don't want to say exploited. The better word is they have been persuaded. But what these people did, what happened to these two election workers was their names were outed, their addresses were outed, their telephone numbers were outed on purpose so that the harassment would begin. Now that's my opinion, but I think that opinion is pretty well informed and justified, and they ruined their lives. And this,
very much so.
And this is a sublime piece of bullying. And what we do not want in this country is a government that becomes a bully so that people are afraid of the government and they feel ruled, and it should be just the reverse. The people of America rule America.
Now, I couldn't agree more. In fact, the word bully is so appropriate here because these poor women were afraid to go anywhere They were afraid to go to the grocery store. The one woman just basically hid out the entire time. I mean, on a positive note, it looks like they'll win a defamation case, but you can't get your life back. Those 2 or 3 years, you can't get your life back that you were in such a horrified state.
And unfortunately, it may be that the people responsible will be judgment proof from actually having to pay the money, because they've been sued by everybody else.
Yeah, there's a long list. Okay, unfortunately, and this ties into what we were talking about a little bit earlier, unfortunately, many people no longer trust the institutions of the United States anymore because of all the emotional manipulation and disinformation. How do we regain trust in our 3 branches of governments?
Well, one way is this is an example. When someone in the United States Congress says that another member of the United States Congress cannot serve properly because they didn't take an oath on a Christian Bible. Now,
this is referring to, but just in case some people at home don't know, you're referring to, was it Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Marjorie Taylor Greene,
who was talking about Ilhan?
Made it very clear that the oath that she took on the Koran was no good, because this is, I think she said something to the effect that this is a Christian country. This is a country that welcomes all religious faiths, all races. And when you say that an oath is no good unless you take it on a Christian Bible, you're also saying that the oath a witness takes in a courtroom, which, by the way, none of these oaths have any religious component to them. It's read into them. But when you're in court and you're testifying, your oath, regardless of your religion, enables you to testify to what you perceived, what you remember, and what you can communicate in court. And there is no religious test for any of that.
It's interesting because if people look at it, it's almost ridiculous to have somebody swear on something they don't believe in. It made more sense she swore on a Quran. I mean, that makes more sense that Ilhan would have done that. But again, sensibility does not always go with some of our current congressional members. Anything else you want to add off the top of your head before we go?
I would, thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, well,
I want to thank my law firm, Flynn Judici, for agreeing to me coming and sharing my views about these things.
Can I stop you there for a second? Because I would like you to tell us more, because just in case any of you want a very learned man as an attorney, could you repeat the name of the law firm? Seriously.
It's called Flynn Judici, and it has offices in Newport Beach, Reno, and Phoenix, and Las Vegas.
Okay.
But I have one other thing. My family has a very, very close relationship with the Filipino community here, and they were very kind to me when I was running for office. That is because my father was captured on Bataan and was a prisoner of war for 3.5 years. And he was always extremely fond of the people that helped them, that secretly brought aid to them. And I want to, after all these years, I'd like to express my appreciation for the support of that community in my political career.
Well, thank you for that, because for those of you who may not know, this crew that is doing this also does Philam TV, which is a Filipino-American television series of programs. And they've been wonderful to work with, and I appreciate you wanting to mention that, because I'm sure they would like to hear it's been appreciated. Okay. So thank you so much, Your Honor. I appreciate you coming by.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. There you have it, friends. The former Nevada Supreme Court Justice, A. William Maupin, on critical thinking. Let's have our take, which includes you, when we come back. Don't go away. Welcome back to Stop and Think. Chief Justice Maupin was so dead right about the fact that our fellow Americans, unfortunately, often believe things because they're trusting people who should not be trusted. What are you thinking? What's your take on the matter? Email me or send me a video or audio clip on this. If we get to feature your take, we'll send you a gift. Email it to stopandthink@gmail.com. I have to say, in closing, it's really been a pleasure sharing with you our pilot episode featuring the former Chief Justice of the state of Nevada, the Honorable Justice Maupin. Next week, we're going to feature another amazing guest, and here's a clue. She could be the next mayor of the city of Las Vegas. Care to guess? Well, don't miss any of our episodes exclusively on VegasLifeTV, locally and globally. Visit VegasLifeTV.us for more information. On a final note, let me leave you with this thought. Never worry about who will be offended if you speak the truth. Worry about who will be misled, deceived, and destroyed if you don't. My friends, remember to stop and think. This has been your host, Eileen. Good day, everybody.